Hello, I've just read chapter 17 of the last of the Jedi secret weapon. So, they've all broken, so Trevor, Roan and Amy have broken into the factory. And Ferris looks at Trevor and says, "You took your time finding me again," and he squeezes his shoulders, happy to see him looking so well. And Trevor says, "You're the one who keeps disappearing," and he just can't believe he had somehow given into the doubts that Ferris had betrayed to them. And Ferris leads the way and leads the way to the central office where he'd see Moff Tarkin, and he points out the scientists' meeting rooms and labs, and Amy says she'll take the labs. Trevor says he'll go to the computer in the hangar and see if the flight records tell us, and as the flight records might tell them something. And Bones says that he'll take the main computer, and he says, "Come on, Ferris," and you really just see their partnership, and it's such a shame that we haven't had more time with them too, especially because I mentioned in the Desperate Mission, if you remember, in my review for that I accidentally spoilt myself on Rowan's death on Wikipedia. I did it again. I spoilt myself on his death and how he dies. Okay, I'm not how he dies. I know he dies to Vader, but of course, you never know with Wikipedia. You know, it also was saying that Keats was injured by when the stormtroopers attacked the Erased, but they never attacked the Erased. They only attacked Solace so far, at least. So it was Anyway, Rowan and Ferris make their way to the old computer, and it says, "It was like old times. Ferris and Rowan hit the keyboards under pressure, trying to track down secrets. Once it had been from dishonest multi-system corporations, and now it's from an empire they were certain was choking the life and heart of the galaxy." And we're told that Rowan says he'll put in Despair. If you remember, Despayre. I completely forgot about Despair. And he says to Ferris, after he had mentioned it, he did a bit of research and he couldn't find much aside from that it was an out-of-rim planet in the Haru system, and it's a penal colony, and it says there's a curious lack of real information on it. And Ferris says he's going to look into Tarkin's files and see if he can access anything. And there's a bit of silence for a moment. Then Rowan whistles as he takes out his starter pad, and Ferris warns him that the computer probably has a safety wipe thing where if he starts to try and download stuff, it'll wipe all the information. Rowan says, "Disabled it. Don't you remember how very good I am at this?" And he explains that Rowan flips through the data and says that Tarkin has asked the factory manager to bypass safeguards for workers, and he says, "We can release this information and bust a big smoking hole in there. We're here for the betterment of Balasa space junk." And Ferris returns his attention to his homework and says weapons delivery system. And that's what they must be working on. I've got orders for high-functioning engineering droids. Whoa, a shipment of loquazine and titroxinate. He paused. Some of these memos have been forwarded to ZA. And, Rowan goes, "Friend of yours?" And Rowan says that there's only one ZA, Jenna Zan Arbor, and she's a galactic criminal, and he says, all around a vicious rival. And it says, and Rowan mentions that it sounds like they're working on weapons here as well as infrastructure, and he says that's totally against what they said. And Ferris continues saying that's with false labels, it's all undercover. And then Amy comes in and tells them that they've only got 4 more minutes. And that she's finding out some strange stuff. And the wording here is a bit strange. She says, it's not so much what they're working on as the scale of it. Full stop. Like they're planning to take over an entire planet and redo its infrastructure or something. Eh? Yeah. Why did you say not so much and then put a full stop after? Is it the scale of it is is that is the scale of it isn't just factory, isn't as simple as factory stuff. I don't know. I assume that's probably what it is. And Ferris says to take a look, and he hands her a data screen, and she reads it quickly and says that this is similar to some of the torture methods they've used on victims, such as ROAN. And I googled some of the LucasFilm and titranoxinate on Wikipedia. Not googled, okay, Wikipedia. And apparently they were mentioned in the Desperate Mission as well, which I don't remember, but apparently they were. But they must have been used on ROAN then. And she says that it's completely against. And she says that that some of these methods are completely against the regulations passed by the Senate generations ago. And ROAN says the Emperor doesn't believe in following regulations; he just lets the Senate pass them, and then he ignores them. He says it's a convenient version of democracy. And Ferris says, and it's all for the good of the galaxy. Remember, we better get out of here. Time's up. I think we have enough. Where's Trevor? ROAN says late as usual, they can go meet him at the door. And they run towards the door, and if they feel time, and it's as if they know time's ticking away. And once they get to the door, Trevor's missing. He's not there, and ROAN's getting a bit impatient. He says he let out an exasperated sound, and they are less than a minute now, and they're wondering where Trevor is. Again, I'm still not entirely sure what they're working on then. If it's... Again, it does say weapons, so again, I still think it may just be the Death Star. But the LucasFilm and titranoxate, that's quite interesting. What's that being used for? Is it like for the ball torture droids, whatever they're called? I don't know. And who is ZA? Who's what was it? Jenna Zanarbor? Who's Jenna Zanarbor? Okay, I maybe shouldn't have googled her. Apparently she dies when she appears in some of the later books. So, okay, that's not good then. I didn't get a good look at that. So maybe, but I think she appeared in Jedi Quest. I could be wrong on that. But anyway, I don't really have a whole lot to say with this chapter. Again, it is just the break-in. But yeah, it's interesting where this is all going to be heading. It's going to be interesting to see what Trevor's found. So, yeah. Again, I don't have a whole lot to say for this chapter. There's just not really anything to say. Again, you see Trevor feeling... Trevor, it's nice to see him feeling better now that he's seen Ferris again, So yeah. I think I'll go and read chapter 18. So yeah. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye. Oh. I knew it was coming. I mentioned it before, but does it still hit hard? Okay, so I've just read chapter 18 of The Last of the Jedi Secret Weapon. So we learn that Trevor hasn't found anything in the office. Not in the office, in the hangar, sorry. We learn, and it says, he wasn't a wheeze like ROAN. He picked up a couple of hacking techniques from Ferris, but he wasn't a mastermind. And so he starts snooping around to see if he can find anything in a room or in the next turn of a hall or behind a closed door, and we're told that he only has 10 minutes, and that he can cover a lot of ground in 10 minutes. And he doesn't know what he's looking for, but he'll know when he finds it. And he peeks into offices and laboratories, and he turns the corner, and then he stops. He has a bad feeling come to him. His thief instincts, not the Force. and he hears Vader's breathing, and he rushes himself into an equipment closet to his right, and he gets out his comlink to try and warn Ferrus and ROAN and Amy, but they probably won't get it. He knows they probably won't get it because they turn their comlinks off because any communications could be intercepted by the Empire, given they're in an Imperial facility. And so he's in the closet. He keeps the door slightly open by a crack. And he thinks, how lucky could a guy get meeting up with Lord on High Vader again? And he watches as Vader goes into an office. And we're told that Russell, and we're given his last name, Russell Wake. And we're told how he's tried to always stay out of politics, and he was fortunate to live on Banasa, and even when the Clone Wars broke out, he wasn't much interested in fighting against the Separatists, because again the Republic was riddled with greed and corruption, and he thought, who could say they were wrong? And then of course the Empire took over, and we're told, and suddenly everything he valued in his life was thrown away. We're told how the Emperor had deemed Ballas worthy of conquest and example, and how he wanted to install a governor, and how the Ballassians objected and resisted, and how the Empire and it says the Empire, and once that objection registered as solid opposition, the Empire had come down on them. They had underestimated the opposition. And we're told how, though Russell tried to keep out of it, his old heart was stirred, and we're told that freedom became more than a concept to him. It was a reality as firm as the turbo rake he held in his hands, as it says. And we're told that the things he counted on had disappeared. And it says, the quarrelsome politicians, silence. The press shut down. Once the Empire had moved its garrison in and controlled the government, people were imprisoned without trial or charges. Fear ruled the city, and those who ran the government were replaced if they were protested. And we're told that if Russell was moved to care about all this, it didn't mean... But it says, but if Russell was moved to care about all this, it didn't mean he ever wanted to fight it. And we told out the resistance members had courage, and Russell's courage came in removing weeds from the garden. But he knows he would crumble and under actual real danger. And we're told how the idea of joining the resistance movement was never in his plans until he met Ferrus Solon. We're told that he sat here sweating at the and trying to keep his nerves under control, and he has about 15 minutes, and he thinks surely he could keep them steady for 15 minutes, but if only they weren't such long minutes. And that's when the door opens and Vader comes in, and he smashes his knees on the console accidentally. And Vader says that you seem nervous this evening, and Russell's getting a bit panicky, and he says it's a long night, and he's able to stand up again and hides a blinking light indicating that there's a problem with security by standing in front of it. And Vader says he was seen talking with Ferrus, and Russell relaxes a bit, thinking it's just one of Vader's random inquisitions, and he's heard that he does them at random times to keep people off balance. And he clears his throat, and then he says, don't clear your throat, it makes you sound guilty. And he says that, yes, it was in the garden for a few minutes, and Vader, and they were talking about gardening, and that's when Russell starts getting force choked. And he thinks, and it says, it wasn't as though Russell's life flashed before his eyes. It wasn't as though he remembers everything from birth until this moment. He thought of his wife, and he thought of his daughter, and he thought of the courage he thought he didn't have. And suddenly, there it was in his hands, courage and defiance and pride. And he tells Vader he has nothing to tell him. And he closes his eyes, and he feels like, and because he's seen into the merciless picture of Vader's visor, and he doesn't want to look at that, and he closes his eyes and thinks of, and it says, instead, he pictured the things that nourished him, his garden, his wife, his daughter. And we're told he's travelling down a rushing tunnel of black, and he said, and this is the last couple lines of this page. He was travelling down a rushing tunnel of black, sparks shooting out of his fingers, his heels. No pain now. He just wished someone could know this. He found his courage in the end. That's it for Paul Russell, unfortunately. Ferris is now dashing through the door, dashing down the hallways to try and find Trevor, and Trevor runs towards him and tells him that there's Vader, and he's interrogated Russell, and that Russell's dead. And Ferris sees, and it says, Ferris saw that the boy was close to the edge. He had seen so many things, but he hadn't yet seen this, the casual destruction of a living being face to face for no other motive than to extract a piece of information. And he grabs Trevor and takes him to a small room in the laboratory, and he tells him it's filled with equipment, and he tells him to stay there, and he'll get him when it's safe, and he gives him the information chip from Roan's starter pad, and he tells him to hide it. And Trevor tries to ask what it is, but Ferris says that Will has to see it, and he says if he doesn't come back, get himself to the hangar just before dawn, and you have to sneak himself onto a ship, which he knows he's very good at. And he says, I should be able to come back and get you, and of course get on the ship if he can't. And Ferris asks what he would do, and Ferris says that there's no time, and he says one of us has to get out. It might have to be you. Just one thing, stay away from Vader. And he rushes off, and he thinks he has to, and Ferris is thinking he needs to ensure Trevor's safety. It's too late for Russell. Poor Russell. And he runs back the way he's come, thinking he can't fight Vader. He doesn't have the skill, but he would if it was the last resort. But he thinks he has to bluff. That's his best bet at the moment. And he gets to the door and he runs toward the door where Roan and Amy are, and he stops to a halt as Vader stands between them. And Vader says, Olin has joined us. Perhaps you can explain what these thieves are doing here. And Ferris says that the Emperor put him in charge of security, and he's improvising this. And he knows Vader won't be able to check. He says, I was asked by the Emperor to keep an eye on security, and he knows Vader won't be able to check until after until after they're done. Until after this. And by that point he's hoped to be underground or off planet, and that's if it worked. And he says he'll take them into custody, and Vader says, do you think I don't recognise Roan lands? And he says, do you think I'll be foolish enough to let you take him away? Ferris tries to tell him that he's a former associate, yes. And he says, but, and that's when it happens. Vader plunges his lightsaber into Roan's heart, and Roan starts falls to his knees. He doesn't flinch, but he does see, but pain does come into his eyes. Amy cries out and kneels down to support Roan, and Roan looks at Ferris saying, don't give yourself away for me. Mo doesn't say it, but it's the look. And Roan and Ferris, he just can't bear it. He runs over and grabs Roan to support him. And Roan tries to reach out for Ferris's forearm. His hand slips, but Ferris makes sure to secure Roan's arm onto his forearm, and he grabs Roan's arm as well, and they're greeting. And he squeezes Roan's arm, and he wishes he could pass his strength into him. And it says he'd seen enough of death to know it was too late. Ferris whispers to Roan, farewell, brother. And it says he felt Roan's spirit lift. He felt it fly, and he was left alone. And then Ferris is absolutely filled with rage. He is filled with it now. And he leaps at Vader and draws his lightsaber, and that's where we end off the chapter. Oh, I was not expecting... I knew Roan would die, you know. I knew that was going to happen. I knew it in the desperate mission, and then I forgot about it. And then I spoilt myself on it, and I've been trying to forget it for when it came up, but... I was not... if I hadn't predicted it... Not say predicted it, if I hadn't known about it, it would have been... It probably would have hit even harder than it already did. But yeah, where was I? Yeah, it probably would have hit even harder if I didn't get reminded that ROAN died. You know, it would have hit even harder. Again, I don't know why Trevor's being hid there. What's going on with that? It's with the context of Ferris knowing, you know. It's like he was going to escape with ROAN and Amy, leaving Trevor there. It's like, what's he up to there? So that's interesting. So we'll see what that leads to. Again, Paul Russell. Again, it's just that death for ROAN, Paul ROAN. And the thing is, I feel like we haven't seen enough of ROAN. I want to see more of ROAN. I was really hoping so that we could have moments where it's just Ferris and ROAN without having to worry about, you know, the resistance and stuff. The resistance movements. Just have sit down and have a nice conversation with each other. And just see them be themselves with each other, you know. That's something that I really was wanting to see, and we haven't got it. And I was even saying it, I think, back in Death on Naboo, maybe even earlier, that I really wanted to see. I would really like just seeing like a book. It's just a story where it's the two of them, you know, nothing of consequence, just a short story of like a day in their lives and seeing them two together. Because I wasn't ready for ROAN to go, but it's such a sad but beautiful way for him to go. It's so beautiful. It's such a sad but impactful ending, and it really hits hard. It really hits hard. It's gonna. I guess the next chapter is gonna be a lightsaber duel. So that's. We know Ferris isn't skilled enough to fight Vader. I've seen the first couple of lines. It says he hoped to take him off guard, which I assume he hasn't. And even reading ROAN stuff, you know, did bring a tear to my eyes. So, I just don't want ROAN to go yet. Once I read chapter 19, I've only got 2 more to go. So, and there'll be 10 pages long each or so, roughly. And also, for it to just be 5 chapters long from now on. Oh well. But you never know, maybe one of them will be 15 pages and the other, and yeah, anyway. I guess that may just end where this review is, because I don't really have a whole lot to say. Oh, poor Trevor, you know, he's seen so much, he didn't need to see that with Russell. Poor Trevor, and, yeah. The next chapter is quite short. It's just about a page and a bit. So, yeah. Well, it's 2 pages long, but you know, there's only really about 3/4 of a page for the first page, and it's about 3/4 of a page on the next page. So, yeah. So what's that about? Oh, never mind. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and goodbye. Okay, this was quite a short chapter, as I did say that last review, do you know? But so Ferris is attacking Vader, and he thought he'd have the element of surprise, but Vader completely expected it. In fact, it seems like he had killed ROAN just so he could provoke Ferris to attack. and it says there was no other explanation for it, and it served to fuel Ferris's rage. Roan had died for this, and Ferris hears Amy shouts, but it's too focused at plunging his lightsaber into Vader. He feels the need to, and he whirls and attacks again. But Vader moves faster than what Ferris would have expected him to with all that armour. And that's when Ferris feels the dark side fill the air, and he is lifted up and choking. And that says Ferris felt the dark side of the Force fill the air, choking him, and then he's described as being lifted up and being wrenched forward, and he hangs in the air like a puppet, and he looks down at Vader's helmet, and Vader says, "I am bored." And he moves his lightsaber towards Ferris's neck, Ferris is waiting to be killed, but he looks at that helmet and feels something stirring, something personal, and he feels a hatred, and he's wondering what that source of that hatred is, and it says, "A hatred deep in a black heart, a hatred so big it was directed not so much at Ferris, but at what he represented." And he wonders what the source of the hate is, and then stormtroopers fill the room, and Vader lets him go. And he orders the stormtroopers to take Ferris, and he says, "Take him and her, and take that one away." And the stormtrooper asks about Ferris's weapon, the lightsaber, and Ferris says and Vader says he can keep it as a reminder of his failure, and he walks off. And the stormtroopers drag Roan away, as it says, like a sack of grain. And Ferris is lifted up to his feet, and he's forced to walk alongside Amy, and he's sure he's going back to prison, and he's almost certainly going to be executed. And he doesn't care. He does not care at this point. You really just feel Ferris. You really understand Ferris's frustration and rage. You really understand it. You really, really feel that frustration and rage from Ferris in this. You really do understand it. You really feel it. You almost want to join him in getting that payback for Roan. This was quite a good chapter, if short. It was a good chapter, if short, but it's mainly good because of how the last chapter ended and the consequence of that chapter. That's why it's so good. It's the consequence of the last chapter. And funnily enough, if you remember, at the start of these reviews, I said that there seems to be a blank page between chapter 19 and chapter 20. You know, page 130 is just completely blank. I completely forgot about that, and I finished the chapter, meant to go look meant to turn it over to put my bookmark in for the next page, and then there was a blank page, and I thought, oh, I forgot about that. So technically, the story is 148 pages long, technically, but it's also but the page counts 149, so yeah. But you really, really understand Ferris's frustration here. Not just his frustration, his anger, his fury. He's absolutely furious. And I really do want Roan to die. Poor Roan. Again, I don't have a whole lot to say on this chapter. I do find it interesting. He does pause and wonder what the source of Vader's fury is. You know, he knows that it's not at Ferris particularly, but at what he represents, as it says. But it's interesting that he pauses once he's being held in the air. He pauses. I guess he pauses for a moment and takes a moment to look at that. We've got Trevor for the next chapter. What is chapter 21 going to be about? Never gone too far back. No, oh, it's also a blank page for chapter 20, for between chapter 20 and chapter 21. Okay. Okay. It's actually going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if Palpatine promises Ferris the same thing he promised to Anakin, with Plagueis, you know, with saving people from death. But I have a feeling that may be in Ferris's interest now. And I just looked at the last page. You know, I'm not sure who he's talking. I'm not sure who he's talking to Palpatine. It does say, "Are you ready to learn?" And he says, "I'm ready to learn," or something like that. And it says he said, and he's ready to learn. So I assume that's probably Ferris. But I think he's probably going to be pushed a little bit to the dark side here, and it's going to be interesting to see how the next book goes. So yeah. And that brings an end to my review of Chapter 19 of The Last of the Jedi Secret Weapon, Paul Roan. So yeah, thank you all for watching, and goodbye. I'm not going to see Roan again, am I? Until I read the series again, if I do. Hello everyone, I've just read Chapter 20 of The Last of the Jedi Secret Weapon. Oh, poor Trevor. Okay, it's really going hard here in this chapter. So apparently, so it says, if you remember when Trevor was saying to the 11 that he can follow rules, he was lying, he can't. And he can't really, he says he wasn't that good at obeying orders, even if they came from Ferris. And we're told that he hadn't stayed in his little location in the laboratory. He went around a corner and saw the whole thing with Roan. He saw Roan get killed. He saw Ferris have his brief fight with Vader. He saw all of it. And he was waiting for Ferris, and he had waited for Ferris to die, and he just couldn't stop shaking. And it says he thought he'd seen everything. He thought he could handle anything, but he felt as though his mind had broken after seeing this night. And then it says she found him in the laboratory, so it's like, hey, that. Is the laboratory just around the corner? And it's one of the scientists, and it says a tall, slender woman in a dark red tunic, which I assume is the same woman who was in the burgundy tunic. I assume it's the same one. Because it does. I assume it's the same woman. You know, she was described as being a strong face, and she was described as being a sad face. Here she's described as being tall, slender in a dark red tunic. So I assume it's the same woman, but you never know. And she opens the door, and that's when a shaft of light hits Trevor's face, and he turns away, but he didn't move. And he just can't imagine running anymore. Trevor just can't keep running anymore. And the woman says, well, hello. And she tells him that security's all over the building, but she'll get him out. And she says that she's just as much as a prisoner as he is. And Trevor explains he's meant to get to the hangar before dawn. And she explains that she can do that, and she has clearance. And she asks if he can walk. And Trevor is able to walk, but his legs are shaking. And she gives him a reassuring nod as she wheels over a cart with a canister. And Trevor goes, and she asks if Trevor can fit in, and Trevor is able to, and she brings him over to the hangar. And she says that leaving this for disposal, Class D, toxic, so not to be opened. And one of the stormtroopers says affirmative. And I assume he's bought. And then she opens the lid, and tells him that this canister is going to be loaded onto a grav sled and then taken back to the I'll just read out what she says. This will be loaded onto a grav sled and taken back to the battalion. It's done by droids, so wait until they're busy negotiating air traffic. Just be sure to get off before it goes to the garrison. Good luck, whoever you are. And Trevor stops her from closing the canister for a moment, and he says, wait, you planned this already, this was your escape route. And she says, yes. And Trevor says, but once I do it, you won't be able to get out. You won't be able to get out through this route. And she meets his gaze for a long moment, and it says, he saw that she was giving up something that kept her going, gave her a reason to hope. If things became too bad, she would always be able to escape. Now she has no hope, because of course this is her escape route, and she tells him to just go, and she closes the lid, and eventually Trevor feels himself being put onto the grav sled, and he eventually hears the sounds of the Bala of Usa. And even though he can't see where he is, he knows where he is just from the familiar sounds. And he waits until they were in the centre of the city, as it says, the most populous districts of Bluestone. And then he eases open the lid, and the droids are simple service droids, but they are equipped with weapons in their torsos. And but we're told that they were busy monitoring air traffic, and Trevor's able to wiggle out, and a Balarson who's passing by on an airspeeder sees him, but he doesn't say anything, and I completely forgot about that. But yes, that's the way of the Balarsons. You keep to yourself. And Trevor crouches behind the canister and then waits until they get to a traffic stop, and he gets off, and he makes his way back to the safe house with Will. And the sounds of the city comfort him. And we're told he doesn't want to break the news to Will, and he definitely doesn't want to say it out loud. And he's let in by Will, and Will asks what happened and where Amy is, and he explains that she's captured. And Will asks about it, and Will says, I've been up all night, waiting. ROAN? And Trevor ignores the question and says ROAN was captured too, Vader was there. And Will asks again about ROAN, and Trevor says dead. And it says Trevor felt his mouth twist out of shape, and he hears Stoner moan as she comes in with her hands against her mouth. And we're told that, and we actually get a confirmation that Will was actually one of the founding members of the 11. He is one of the original 11. And it says, Will, who was always so strong, shot Trevor by simply lowering himself to the hallway floor. He put his head in his hands. Will had always been so brusque and remote. He was a legendary figure in USA, one of the founding members of the 11. Trevor has never known that he could be overcome like this. It added to his own fear, and he started to shake again. And Donna brings Trevor over to a sleep couch, which is basically just a bed. And she puts 2 blankets over him and says that you need to get warm. And that's when Trevor realises just how cold he is. And Donna goes and makes him a hot cup of tea, and she tells him to drink it, and he says he can't. Then Will appears, and he tells Trevor not to worry, because it happens, the shaking, because he's shaking a lot. He tells him not to worry about the shaking, and it happens, and that Trevor will be alright. And Trevor is a bit ashamed and hides his face, and Will says to not worry, not be ashamed, because it's happened to him numerous times. And again, it goes at some point, eventually, and Will disappears for a bit, and Trevor drinks the tea, and he doesn't really taste it, but he feels the warmth, and Will eventually comes back, and he says that it's all on the HoloNet. He says, it's on the HoloNet now, they're bragging about it, and Trevor says, explains how ROAN died. He says he saw him die and how Vader acted so fast no one expected it, and how ROAN wasn't even armed with a blaster. And he sees the pain. He sees the pain in Will's eyes. And we're told, and I assume it's talking about Trevor here, because it does mention him quite a few times in this little paragraph. And we're told about how ROAN gave Trevor bakery rolls for breakfast, and advice when he needed it. He let him sleep in the office when it was cold, and he looked the other way when Trevor picked up a few credits on his way out the door. and he said, and then, when Trevor was no longer a petty thief, but a fellow resistance fighter, he had never made him feel less than anybody else. He had accepted him. And we're told that ROAN and Ferris were the closest family Trevor had felt, and the closest family that Trevor had known since his own family had died. And it says every last one of them: mother, father, brother, ROAN. And he reaches into his tunic and takes out the information chip and hands it to Will, and he says that there's something on there, and there's something that they were able to discover. And Will says that at least they have this. And Trevor feels something clench inside him, and he realises that it's fear, and he thinks it's fear and it says it was fear that had dug in, that might never leave. And he says to Will he fears that they might lose, and Will says that they won't lose, but they have to get him off planet, and Trevor protests. And Will says that he's contacted Flame, and she'll take him to Coruscant. And Trevor says he wants to help on Belarsa, he wants to help here. And Will explains that he can't help on Belarsa because it's only a matter of time before they start looking for Trevor. And he says they've traced a vehicle that you and Amy and ROAN took to the factory, and he says they know he was part of a group because of a hidden security camera at one of the checkpoints. And he explains that Flames volunteered to take him off planet, and Dex has agreed to allow both of them to enter his safe house on Coruscant. And again he reassures him that he has friends there waiting for him. And Trevor looks from Will to Donna, and it says what they weren't saying, but what he knew, was that if he insisted on remaining, he would endanger all of them. He had to find the courage not to stay, but to leave. And we're told that he really thought about if he was brave or not. And now he bounced from one situation to another and held himself together pretty much out of stubbornness and anything else. And we're told that courage didn't live the way in him that it lived in Rome. And we're told that Trevor now knew he was never brave before, only ignorant. And we're told despite the battles he'd seen and the things he'd witnessed, he never realised what he was up against until last night. And we're told he can't find his courage, he just has to accept it and keep going, and he agrees, and it says in his heart he said his first goodbye to Rome. He knew that letting go of Rome would be done by centimetres, a small bit at a time, but he did not say goodbye to Ferris. He would see him again. If he let go of that hope, he would let go of too much. And then we cut to Coruscant, and Trevor and Flame doesn't speak to him much on the trip there. He gives him some space. She gives him some space, sorry. And we're told that Dex arranged a little landing site for them, where lots of ships, most of them probably unregistered, are. And as they leave, Trevor explains that Coruscant is finding ways to get around the Empire, and Flame says that even a powerful government like them can't control every centimetre. And she says we find the places they can't get to, and he hides there. And Trevor thinks of the asteroid base, and they make their way to the Orange District, and we're told he never forgets the route. And they walk into chaos, and this is the chapter where we have Orion, appear, which I mentioned earlier, in the earlier reviews. I have no idea how Orion is here. Hopefully it's like addressed in an author's note in the next book or so. no, if worst comes to worst, maybe there was like an attachment ship on Trevor's ship when he came to the asteroid base. You know, maybe that was what it was. And he left that there for them in case. I don't know. But, oh, gone back too far now. They pretty much walk into chaos. And we're told that Cohen's okay. He got shot, but he's okay. He's got a bandaged shoulder. And Dex is saying that they can help is saying to Astrid that they can help her if they let us, and that if she lets them, and that they need a plan. And Astrid's saying that she can do it herself, they're wasting time, and she's saying, with every second you're holding me back, they're taking him away. It could be off planet at any moment, it could be anywhere. And Trevor asks what happened to Lune, but no one answers him. And Cohen says they know where he is, that's what they're trying to tell him. And Astrid asks where he is. And Orion tries to explain that they need a plan and that they can't just go there. But he gets cut off by Astrid, who screams, "Where is he?" And Dex says that he's been taken to the Imperial Naval Academy and that he's been enrolled, and Astrid knows it's Bogdavian. She says, "I knew he was behind this, I just didn't think he could have the wits to pull it off." And Clive explains he didn't need the wits, he needed the resources. And that he has that now. And he says, Clive continues saying Sono Solo's in charge of the academy, it's a demotion for him, but Bog and Solo are allies from way back, as you know. And Dex says that she can't just go running there by herself, there's high security around it, and even parents can't visit their children there without clearance. And he says that you definitely will not have clearance. And Astrid asks what her great plan is. And Trevor can see she doesn't trust anyone but herself to go after Lune. And everyone exchanges glances, and Orion says that they don't have one yet, and that they just discovered where he was a few minutes ago. And Clive being Clive, says, "Astrid, my lovely, you've got to trust us." And he says, "Such as we are, look around. We have plenty of skills here. We'll figure it out. We'll get him back, all of us." And Keats says, "It's a promise. I'll die trying, but I'll get him back to you." And Astrid says she doesn't need promises, she needs to go. And she says she has to go after him. And she says, "You think he's so strong, and he is, but he's still a boy. He can still be afraid. I have to try. I'll say I'm his mother. I'll demand." And she's cut off by Olian again. Why is Olian here? And Olian says that's just what Bog wants her to do. And he says if you show up there, they'll arrest her before she can even get up the ramp. In the time it takes her to get up the ramp. And it says Astrid's body suddenly collapsed in on itself, and she folded herself into, crouching near the floor, her forehead against her clenched hands. And everyone begins talking at once for a plan and it says everyone began to talk at once about the academy's location, probable security, where to procure a getaway vehicle, if the delivery services will be vulnerable to infiltration. And Trevor intervenes and says that he has a plan and that he'll enlist himself into the academy. And that's where we end off the chapter. We only got one more chapter now, and it's about Ferris again. You really feel Trevor's pain. You really feel Trevor's tirement. You feel how tired Trevor is running. You feel how hurt he is. Yet you also understand his persistence. You understand why he wants to stay. You understand why he keeps saying that he's not going. You really just understand how he's feeling. And it's poor Trev. Poor Trev. You really just feel for Trevor in this chapter. You really do. That's probably the best thing about this chapter, due to what really makes you understand it from Trevor's perspective. He's hurt. He's tired, yet he's still trying to keep on going. And that's so Trevor. It's such a hard-hitting chapter. It's so hard-hitting. Oh, poor Trev. And that ending as well, where he's saying he will enlist himself into the Naval Academy to rescue Lune. That's going to be interesting. We'll see how that goes. So yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what the next mass chapter is about. I know it says Ferris is thinking about the moments of Roan's death over and over again in his mind. I read that first line. And I know it's probably got Palpatine and Ferris talking in the last chapter. I know it has that, so in the last page, sorry. And him saying that he he said, which I assume is Ferris saying that he's ready to learn. And also I assume Palpatine's giving him a little bit of training. But I don't really know what the next chapter's going to be about. So yeah. It is funny though. I'm not talking about the chapter in specifically now, but it's funny that Tarkin is on the cover of the book. Because didn't he only appear in like 1, maybe 2 chapters? I'm fairly sure he only appeared in 1 chapter in this whole book, so at least so far. You know, we've still got 1 more chapter, but I doubt he'll appear in that one. We'll see though. But you know, it's like it's on the cover. It's on the front cover of the book, and he only has 1, again maybe 2 appearances in the book. In if we're talking about chapters, so that's it's quite funny that. Like Ferris and Vader and the 2 stormtroopers was like behind Vader. Like yeah, I can see that. I can see why they're on the cover, but Tarkin, it's a bit it's funny. But anyway, I don't really have anything else to say for this chapter. So yeah, it's such a hard hitting chapter. But the next book's going to be good. Again, still have 1 more chapter to read though. So yeah, thank you all for watching, and goodbye. Hello, I've just read chapter 21 of the Master of the Jedi Secret Weapon. And it also means I've finished Master of the Jedi Secret Weapon. So, Ferris is in his cell alone, and he keeps reliving the moment of Roan's death. The shock is being relived again and again and again. He keeps wondering if he could have saved Roan, if he could have moved, if he could have foreseen it, and it says, if he hadn't been so stupid, so slow, so convinced that Darth Vader would follow procedure, instead of striking out at a man who held no weapon against him. And we're told that he knows why Vader let him keep the lightsaber, because and it says it was a taunt. Vader knew it would torture Ferris to feel its familiar weight on his belt, to put his fingers on its handle and know that his training had meant nothing. His lightsaber was useless. Vader was right. And we're told that he's just only a particle in the galaxy, and how he's alone, and how Roan is gone. And we're told about how their friendship has often led to them being separated, but it says their friendship had been full of separations, but they had always found each other again. And we're told that they had trusted each other's backs, and we're told that in one criminally stupid miscalculation it had cost Roan his death, because Ferris had underestimated Vader, and Ferris is blaming himself for Roan's death. And he thinks about how life would go on around him, but how Ferris wouldn't be the same, and that grief has changed him forever, and that he felt, and it says he felt that as clearly as he could feel the ferrocrete against his cheek. And we're told how Roan's death has introduced fear to him into his life, and how he had been how his powers were so puny to what he faced, which is Vader. And we're told his will had carried him through, and now he realises that he had held out hope in the most secret recesses in his heart. He realises that he was holding out hope that one day this whole thing would end and he would get to continue his normal life with ROAN. And it says he hasn't known the meaning of family. He hadn't known the meaning of family when he's been with the Jedi, but now he did. And the loss of it was impossible to bear, and keep in mind it was ROAN who told him that meaning. And to him, that proves he wasn't a Jedi. And attachments shouldn't have been his reason for keeping on going, And he thinks, but what does it matter if he's not a Jedi? What is he? And it doesn't matter to Ferris because he thinks soon he'll be dead, and he thinks how curious to feel that he wouldn't mind. And he thinks how he's just going to continue replaying ROAN's death until that inevitable death comes for him. He's pretty much ready to just give up. And he thinks about how Vader had killed him again. And that's when he hears Obi-Wan's voice telling him to break down how Vader killed ROAN. And he's saying, break down the movement. Don't see it as a blur. You are a Jedi. Yes, you are. So be a Jedi. And Ferris doesn't much feel like a Jedi, but he obeys the voice and tries to break it down. And he closes his eyes and grabs the memory and tries to put his best to push aside any feelings he has to see it clear. And he sees Vader move, and he sees how he turns his body, and how pretty much everything was positioned for his... how his body was positioned. And you see how he rotates the lightsaber in 360 degrees, and now the rotation had been so fast he'd been unable to track it in the moment. And he breaks it down and he observes that it's Form 4 and then Form 7. And it says, the most advanced Jedi form, done aggressively with impeccable control. And coldness starts scrubbing at Ferris's heart because they're Jedi moves. And he thinks he observes how it had been done with such grace and finesse that it wasn't a drill move. It was ingrained into Vader's body. It was something that his body remembered, and he had an own individual flair to it. And Ferris recognises that there's something familiar about how he moved, and it struck a memory he can't touch. And he thinks if only he could know how old Vader was, and he wonders if he's been on the council because the expertise he had suggested it. And he thinks, I know him. I know the way he moves. But he thinks now everyone he studied with was dead. He knows the fates of all the Padawans. Even though for some of them he couldn't say for certain, he knows that pretty much all of them were dead. And he thinks that he has to have been an instructor or maybe a Jedi Master who had been away for long periods, maybe for so long that they had lost their connection to the Jedi Temple, and that's how Palpatine went and exploited them. And again, Ferris wonders again how a Jedi could be turned to the dark side. It just doesn't seem possible to him, and not possible to any Jedi that he personally know. But then he gets interrupted by Palpatine entering the room. And he says he's considering Ferris's fate, and Ferris pretty much doesn't listen much to Palpatine. And he says how it was a regrettable incident, and he says that you noted the security breach, although he lied about Palpatine asking him to monitor security. And he says, perhaps we can accept that you were zealous in your desire to impress me. And unfortunately, those who broke in were known to you. And he says that Vader's word is always going to be favoured over Ferris's. And Vader believes he was part of the mission. And he also says that taking arms against Vader is a executable act itself. But then he goes, yet, and he walks a bit closer to Ferris, and Ferris just turns his head away. He wishes Palpatine wouldn't get close to him. Palpatine expresses, he says he could trust Ferris. He says, I will confide in you lately, as I feel Lord Vader has been overreaching his authority. and he explains how the death of Roland is only going to make the people of Balasa revolt. You know, he says Balasa was a delicate operation, and with Ronan's being killed, it's only going to inflame the resistance rather than weakening them. And he says it is his task. It is his task to achieve stability in the galaxy again. Blah 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 blah. Well, as Trevor would go, blah blah. And then he says that it is his task to achieve stability in the galaxy, and he says that means he's allowed to break the rules. And he says, for example, about punishment for attacking an Imperial High Officer. And Ferris still doesn't speak, and he just doesn't have any interest in what Palpatine's saying, and it says he was done playing this game. And he starts saying, if Palpatine continues saying, if he only had someone he could trust, and he said someone who understood his goals, and he says if he found that someone, the gifts he could give him would be immense. And again, Ferris looks away. And he just wishes Palpatine would stop talking, and then Palpatine gets Ferris's attention by saying the power over life and death. I did say that Palpatine may promise that to him first, but I think I was mainly remembering that's from the Wikipedia article on midichlorian manipulation. It says that Palpatine promised that gift to Ferris as well, so yeah. But it gets Ferris's attention, and Palpatine says that he notices he has his attention at last, and he says he can teach him things that make him more powerful, that could make him more powerful with Vader in time. It will take time, but only time. And Ferris thinks, more powerful than Vader? Was it possible? And then Palpatine says something that made me laugh out loud for quite a bit. He says, yes, it is possible! As if he was reading Ferris's mind. Of course, he didn't say it like that. You know, it definitely would have been, yes, it is possible. But still, it would be funny if it was, yes, it is possible. But anyway, he then says that, for I created him, did I not? And he says to Ferris that he has the potential to be the greatest Jedi ever known, but he has all the raw materials, he only lacks training. And he says that he will be able to use the Force in ways he's never dreamed of. Palpatine pauses to let the words hang in the air, and Palpatine understands that Ferris isn't quite fully grasping the concept, it's just too much to grasp. And he says, let's take it step by step. And he says, first, I will put the Inquisitors at your disposal. Senator Sano Solo has a plan to gather Force adepts. Lord Vader isn't interested in this, but it has possibilities. But you could take over the search for the Force adepts. With the help of the Inquisitors, Solo is getting nowhere. Because he doesn't understand the Force. It takes a Force adept to find one. And, that triggers something in Ferris's mind. He thinks he can find the Force adepts, and instead of giving them to the Empire, he can bring them to the asteroid. And he thinks all the while he'll be growing more powerful than Vader until he can challenge him. And he thinks that this time he won't be left hanging in the air like a useless bonus thing for Vader at Vader's mercy. He thinks this time he will be able to surprise Vader. He'll be the one to surprise him. And he thinks Vader would be the helpless one, and ROAN would be avenged. And he thinks how Vader had made him a broken man, but he could be put back together again. And he finally looks back at Palpatine, and he says, I'm ready to learn. And that's where he ends off the chapter. Oh, you understand Ferris's pain. You really understand how he feels. And I think part of him part of him does want to be executed, just so he can be with ROAN, you know. I think that's part of how he feels at the moment. But of course, Palpatine of course mentions the power of life and death, and it's going to be interesting to see if Ferris believes that he may just be able to bring back ROAN through that. You know, it's going to be interesting to see if... I know it's Wikipedia says mentioned only, but maybe it doesn't mention that it's called that ROAN's corpse appears at some point or something like that. So, you know, if it's... I wonder if Ferris will try to revive ROAN. I know he won't. I know he doesn't. It'll be interesting to see if he does this to try and also revive ROAN, not just to forward his goal with as a Jedi, and trying to find more Jedi. But yeah, again, this is a good book. Oh, I haven't even thought about the ranking because I've just been enjoying it so much. Okay, where would I put Secret Weapon? Because I know I said that Return of the Dark Side was my top pick. Do I think it was as good as Return of the Dark Side? See, the last couple of chapters for this book are really, really good. I'd say that those last couple of chapters are probably some of the best last couple of chapters we've had for this series. And I'm not sure if I would say it. I would put it at I'm not sure if I put the book as a whole at the best. I'm going to say Return of the Dark Side, Secret Weapon. Then I'm going to go with the previous ranking, which I'm fairly sure was Desperate Mission, Tangled Web, Death on Naboo, Underworld, Dark Warning. I'm fairly sure that was my ranking before, wasn't it? So yeah, I'm going to put Secret Weapon as the second best. I think this was really, really good. It has a great opening, it has a great ending. It's going to be interesting to see how this all goes. I'm looking forward to Against the Empire. And we're also going to finally see Hydra in that book, so, you know, wee! Howdy! I don't know why I went wee! But, you know, that's going to be fun. To see Hydra for the first time. I'm looking forward to Hydra. No, Hydra! Yeah. So, yeah. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye. Oh, do I end it here yet? I don't know. I was trying to send it out a little bit, actually. Again, I quite enjoy the book. ROAN's death. Oh, that was so sad. It's so sad. Makes me sad just thinking about it. Again, the ending for this book, it's the ending chapters for this book, you know, what was it, like, chapter 17 onwards? Oh, incredible. Pretty much from that point onwards, it's just incredible. It's just so heart-wrenching. Actually, I was meaning to go back to chapter 17 to look at, I've gone back to chapter 15, whoops. So look at, there we go, something specifically. I'm trying to remember what Amy was saying. Yeah, she's talking about the scale of stuff, okay. Anyway, I'm not sure if I have anything else to say for this. What else can I say, if I can say anything else? Again, I'm going to be interested to see if this is just more manipulation by Palpatine and Ferris is just going to feel like as trapped as he was before, you know? And it's going to be interesting to see how he even gets the Force Adepts to the asteroids, you know? Really have to keep insisting to Hydra, no, I'll get them to the Imperial Academy myself. And, you know, at that point, is it just going to be like, well, Hydra, why are none of the Force Adepts at the Academy? I don't know. Ferris just keeps taking them away. He says he'll take them. Nah. So, you know, that's going to be interesting to see how he gets any of the 4 steps there if he does. I know Older One is coming up soon with Leia, as she's definitely one of the one. I know she's going to pop up soon. Maybe it's either going to be next book, which is Against the Empire, or the book afterwards, which I'm fairly sure is called Master of Deception. I'm fairly sure that's what it was called, wasn't it? So, yeah. Is there anything else I can say? I'm not sure. No, I don't think I have anything else to say. So, thank you all for watching, and goodbye.